Discover the latest health tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories. This is the Health Channel Podcast. Your journey to better health starts now.
What is anxiety? We all experience it now and then. If I don't get this assignment done in time, I could get fired. These bills are piling up. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my home. Anxiety is a feeling of dread, uneasiness that can result in many different forms of physical, emotional, and behavioral responses. It can give you a temporary boost of energy, and that's the good anxiety, and can help you focus. But for those with anxiety disorders, this fear can be debilitating and severely affect your daily life. Today, we're going to discuss the symptoms, disorders, treatments, as well as answer your questions on this episode of Ask the Doc. Welcome to Ask the Doc, the show where we encourage our viewers to send in their health questions. I'm Dr. Rachna Baksani Mirpuri, licensed mental health counselor. Our first viewer question comes from our very own website, allhealthtv.com, and it's from Valeria, who asks, "Hey, Dr. Baksani, I lost my job a few months ago and haven't found a new one yet. I'm feeling pretty anxious about it. Or am I feeling stressed? I guess my question is this: is there a difference between stress and anxiety?" What a wonderful question to start the discussion on anxiety. How much worry is too much worry, right? That's what we are all confused about. That's what my clients come in with. So let's talk about stress and anxiety. Stress is a response that is a short-term response to an external trigger. Anxiety, however, involves an excessive worry of a perceived or real threat. So it doesn't have to be something that's actually happening in your life that's causing you stress. It could be just a perceived threat, and it causes a debilitating feeling. An anxiety disorder, for it to be characterized, so for anxiety to be characterized as a disorder, it has to be persistent and it has to result in social and occupational impairment. Let's look at some of the symptoms of anxiety. Difficulty sleeping, digestive issues. We know that our gut is where we host all emotions. So when I get anxious, it's that butterfly feeling that I get. Chest pain, increased heart rate, restlessness, headaches, muscle tension, aches and pains, and this is what we called psychosomatic. So it's aches and pains, but they don't have a physical cause. They're actually coming from a psychological reason. Loss of appetite or binge eating. Hope this helped, Valeria, to answer this question about the difference between stress and anxiety. Common to get those two confused. And of course, for more information, you can always feel free to reach out and we can discuss this further. Let's go on to the next question. And that comes from our Facebook page, and it's from Chaz. "Dr. Baksani, my normally vibrant and enthusiastic daughter Clarice has been kind of anxious and a little withdrawn lately. I'm not sure what's going on, but it does make me wonder what role social media plays in increasing anxiety levels." Chaz, firstly, I am so sorry. I'm a parent. I understand the pain of seeing your daughter going through something like that, and it is not easy. Social media, oh my gosh, that's a whole episode on its own. But let me see what I can do in the little time that I have. Yes, social media definitely plays a role. And this is, in my view, how it plays a role. One is the comparisons, right? So think about it. When we see social media, everybody's posting happy times, good times, they're having fun, they're traveling. And that leads to me comparing my life to their life and thinking, ooh, what am I missing out? Or my life doesn't seem that great, right? Also, everybody seems to be happy all the time, which has resulted in kids, teens, even adults feeling that that's how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be happy all the time. We're not supposed to experience stress or anxiety or sadness or any of those negative emotions. And what that does is it keeps me actually stuck because I keep trying to fight it and work so hard to avoid those so-called negative emotions, that it actually keeps me stuck in those emotions, thus resulting in things like depression, anxiety disorders that we have seen increasingly amongst teenagers. Hope that answered your question, Chaz. Let's see what we have next. It's another Facebook question from Rosie. Dr. Buksani, I've been working from home since COVID, and at first I loved it, but now I'm not so sure I feel the same way. I've actually begun feeling a little anxious, and I'm wondering if it's somehow connected to my feelings of loneliness. Is this even possible? Rosie, I thank you for actually bringing this question up. As we know, in recent times, loneliness has actually been categorized as a public health crisis by the US Surgeon General. And definitely, loneliness has its connection to depression and anxiety. While there was a great advantage for people working from home, it has resulted in people isolating themselves and really having feelings of dread and loneliness. Research has found obviously a strong link between loneliness and depression and anxiety. And the reason for that is that when you feel lonely, when you are alone, you ruminate. And generally when we ruminate, we're not ruminating over happy thoughts. We're thinking about negative things. We're thinking about things that aren't working in my life, the things that I need to fix, the things that probably need some work, right? So that's why there's an excessive worry element when I am lonely. What we've also seen is there's an increase in social anxiety. So because people have been at home and working from home for such a long time, and those organic social interactions aren't happening, they're actually getting scared of going out. They're getting scared now of meeting people, new people, and even people who maybe they've had relationships with in the past, because they don't want to embarrass themselves. They don't want to be judged because they haven't done it in such a long time. So we've seen really an increase in social anxiety. What I would say to cope with this is please push yourself to make those commitments to social interactions, because they're not happening organically anymore. You're not going out, you're not meeting your work colleagues. Please try to make an effort in creating those opportunities where you can go out and meet people. I hope that helped. We have our first Instagram question for the day, and it comes to us from Daisy, who asks, Hello, Dr. Buksani. My husband lost his job a few months ago, like many have these days, and he's been having a difficult time managing his anxiety. I am so sorry, Daisy. Do you have any practical strategies that he could use to reduce his anxiety? Daisy, I applaud you. Thank you so much for reaching out. And yes, I would be happy to help you with some tips to help him manage the difficult feelings that he's feeling. The first step, in my view, is always going to be to accept some of those really difficult, anxious feelings that you're having. Emotions, Daisy, are like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. So I always tell my clients, listen, yes, it's a difficult moment. And naturally, when I have a situation like that where I've lost my job, I am going to feel anxious. Let me not fight it. Let me first start with a level of acceptance. And then I'm going to give you now some strategies to help him manage what he's feeling in terms of his anxious thoughts and emotions. First one, controlled breathing. Listen, I cannot tell you how important meditation and breathing is to anxiety treatment, right? So over the years, we found that things like yoga, things like meditation are actually the number one treatment for anxiety. If there's a way, there are lots of apps out there. My personal favorite is the Insight Timer, but there's lots of meditation apps. If you can maybe join him in doing some meditation and some breathing exercises, that would be extremely powerful and helpful. Like I mentioned, yoga is lovely, and Tai Chi. If you can get access to that, there's loads of YouTube videos now on yoga that you can actually do it from home. Cognitive reframing. If I could give every client of mine the one tool that they can take home with them, it's this. we all have the ability to think about a situation differently. The same situation, when I think it's doomsday, brings about feelings of anxiety. But if I can shift my perspective and think about it differently, it helps me feel different. Self-care, very big on that. Please help him take care of him, right? When I take care of myself, I am able to better handle the situation that life throws at me because those are not always in my control. Therapy, lovely. If there is a way that you could encourage him to seek help, he can work with a therapist who will help him with some of these techniques that we're talking about. And of course, whatever your support system is, rally them together to be able to help him cope with these challenging feelings that he's experiencing. Hope that's helpful, and thank you for writing in. Let's take the next question, and that comes to us from Siddhartha. And Siddhartha's question is, Dr. Baksani, after 20 years of marriage, I went through a pretty difficult divorce last year, which has really done a number on me. My friend Ravi said, it's time to get back out there. He's right, but every time I think about it, I get anxious. Completely understandable, Siddhartha. I told my brother that, and he said, I'd be a good candidate for cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. What can you tell me about it? Lovely question. You know, in my years and in my experience of working with clients, we've had such few that actually come in saying, hey, what sort of therapeutic orientation do you have? What techniques do you use? And what is CBT? What is DBT? So I really, really do appreciate this question. And especially it's because it's about cognitive behavior therapy, which is really one of the most reliable and valid techniques we have out there to treat most mental health challenges. Cognitive behavior therapy works on two things: cognitions, which is my thoughts, and behavior, right? So the way this works is by helping the clients modify their behavior and their thoughts so that we can see change, we can see progress. We tackle the behavior part. I tend to tackle the behavior part first because it's the easiest to do. But the behavior part is tackled by behavioral experiments. So we actually encourage clients, if a client is anxious about meeting someone, like in your case, we would set up, and because, oh my gosh, I don't know how it's going to be. What if they don't like me? What if, they talk bad about me? Okay, we set up behavioral experiments where we will encourage our clients to get into those situations, have those positive experiences, and come back. And then, of course, they have a different perspective on it. As far as our thoughts and changing our thoughts is concerned, the two major strategies that cognitive behavior therapy includes is cognitive restructuring and cognitive reframing. Cognitive restructuring involves actually replacing the negative thoughts and habits with more positive ones, right? So it's a 180. So you've been doing this, but now let's do this. Cognitive reframing is actually a shift in perspective. So it's not like you are completely changing your mindset about something, but what you're doing is you're changing the way you are looking at a situation. And that helps me feel better. So once I tackle my behavior and my cognitions, my thoughts, the emotions follow naturally. Hope this is helpful, Siddhartha, on some of the major techniques of CBT. Let's move on. And we have another Facebook question, and this time it's from Leonard. Hey, Dr. Baksani, I've been feeling pretty angsty lately, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mentioned this to Tina, my wife, who's been going to therapy for years. Good for you, Tina. And now think she can diagnose folks. Uh-oh. Anyway, she said, I'm probably suffering from some of those some form of anxiety disorder. Does that mean there's more than one type? What a great question, Leonard. Thank you for bringing that up, because when we think of anxiety, we really just think of people being anxious and that's it. So yes, there are definitely some major forms of anxiety disorder that we tend to see in our clients. I'm going to touch upon some of the most common ones that we see in the clinic. Let's start with generalized anxiety disorder. This is the umbrella. the umbrella anxiety disorder, when we don't have a client walking in who is worried about a particular situation or a particular thing, that's when we call it generalized anxiety disorder. These are clients who are really worried about everything, right? So they're anxious, not about a particular situation, but just anxious in general. Then we have panic disorder. Panic disorder is really characterized by a debilitating panic attacks in situations that cause stress. There are so many emergency room visits because people are having panic attacks. There are about 25 symptoms that the DSM lists as symptoms of panic attacks. So it's different for every person. Sometimes it's sweaty palms, sometimes it's racing heart, sometimes it's chest pain, sometimes it's nausea, throwing up, head pain, headaches. So there are so many symptoms that can characterize panic attacks. And really, it's that intense feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And sometimes it's almost to the extent of, I'm going to die. You're not going to, because panic attacks are not dangerous, but that's really the feeling that a person gets. So that's what characterizes panic disorders. Social anxiety disorder. We are seeing a huge uptake in the number of people with social anxiety disorder. And that part of it is because of that work from home, the social isolation that we experienced. And some of it is because of social media, because people don't want to go out there. They don't want to get embarrassed. They don't want to make a fool of themselves. And what they instead do is just try to avoid any kind of social interaction as best as they can, right? So that's what we call social anxiety disorder. Specific phobias, that's a fear of a particular thing or situation. So I've had clients who've been too afraid to go on an airplane, or I've had clients who will not get their blood drawn. They will faint because they're scared of needles or they're scared of blood. Others who are scared of animals or insects. And that characterizes a specific phobia because you're scared of a particular thing or an object or animal, insect. Agoraphobia, I think one of the most misunderstood disorders, because I had a client come to me the other day and say, oh, I have agoraphobia because I have a fear of closed spaces. No, that's not what agoraphobia is. Agoraphobia is, you could be in a closed space, an open space, a crowded space, a not so crowded space. The idea is I feel stuck in that situation or in that space where I feel I cannot escape. And that situation may result in me feeling helpless, embarrassed, or feeling trapped. That's what agoraphobia is. So it's really the idea that, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in this situation. I'm not able to get out of it. And that fear often stops people from going into situations where they feel, or maybe not even sometimes leaving their home because they don't know what situation they're going to find themselves in and feel stuck. Obsessive compulsive disorder. That, again, made out of two parts, the obsessive part and the compulsive part. So obsessive compulsive disorder is characterized by obsessive thoughts, and that the only way to calm down those obsessive thoughts is by those compulsive behaviors. So if I have an obsessive thought that, oh my gosh, I'm not safe because I did not lock the door, my compulsive behavior is going to be, I'm going to go keep checking that damn door to make sure it's locked. But I never leave, because there comes back the obsessive thought again that, maybe I didn't lock it. And in extreme cases, obsessive compulsive disorder can actually result in people never leaving their homes, right? So that's what OCD is. Post-traumatic stress disorder, probably one of the most challenging disorders that we deal with, and really a result in a traumatic or life-changing event that has happened and leaves a person really battling with those very, very difficult emotions every time they're triggered. And those traumatic situations can range from being a victim of rape, domestic violence, a tragic death of somebody, or witnessing a tragic death of somebody. It can also be a traumatic upbringing, so toxic parents. It can be bullying at school. So all of these can be characterized as traumatic situations that can result in a person experiencing post-traumatic stress. Last but not the least, separation anxiety disorder. This one we tend to see more in children, and it's really the fear of being separated from my primary caregiver. Again, like I said, we see it mostly in schools with kids because they are scared of letting go or separating from their caregivers. Hope this was helpful. I know a long drawn answer, but such an important distinction to make between the different kinds of anxiety disorders. Looks like we've got another Insta question. And this time it's from Brandy. Let's see what Brandy has to say. Dr. Baksani, my wonderful stepmother passed away recently, and I've been kind of anxious ever since. I'm so sorry for your loss, Brandy. The only thing that makes me feel better is snacking. And no surprise, I've put on a couple of pounds. My neighbor Florence says I should exercise. Does that really help with anxiety? And if so, what type of physical activity is most beneficial? Brandy, again, firstly, I'm so sorry for your loss. And yes, binge eating or snacking can be one of those maladaptive coping mechanisms that we use. Let's talk about the physical activity, though. I wish there was a more magic formula to tell you that, Brandy, do this and it will all be okay. But it doesn't work that way. Really, there is no one formula that works for everyone. You have to pick something that you actually enjoy, because that's the only way you're actually going to keep doing it. For some of my clients, it's yoga. For others, it's Pilates. For others, it's dance. And for others, it's gardening. It doesn't matter what you choose, as long as it's something that A, helps you relax, and B, helps you exert a little bit. That's the way you're going to make sure that you keep doing it and actually get the benefits from it. Hope that helps, Brandy, as you cope with your tragic loss. Our next question is from YouTube, and we get this from Alessandra. Hey, Doc, my husband's not the world's greatest communicator, but he's been acting anxious lately. He's trying to hide it, but we've been together for a while now, so I know him well. Maybe if you tell me what are some common triggers of anxiety, I can figure it out and help him. Alessandra, first of all, thank you so much for trying to help him. And yes, I will definitely give you some common triggers that you can help guide him. And these are things that we see mostly in our clients in therapy. Health issues. Obviously, if somebody is having health challenges, that brings a huge level of anxiety. Past trauma that we've talked about. Any traumatic experience that you've had in the past can result in you experiencing anxiety every time you find yourself in a similar situation. Toxic relationships. This is a big one. Toxic relationships can be a big trigger for anxiety, and especially social anxiety. Hectic life or work schedules. I feel like we're all chasing, we're all running all the time, and that can be extremely stressful. Life's major transitions, and that can be having a baby, moving to a new city, moving to a new home, any sort of, or getting a different job. Any of those life transitions can create a sense of anxiety amongst people. Financial concerns, of course, we know, and the uncertain financial times that we live in, it creates a huge level of insecurity in people, thus causing a huge level of stress or anxiety. Social events and performing, and this is really for our people who struggle with social anxiety. They get extremely stressed in social situations. Lack of self-care. Remember, we've talked about this in our previous question. If you were listening to it, self-care, very, very, very important. And lack of it is definitely going to take a toll and result in me feeling much more anxious. And finally, a poor support system. If I don't have people who I can count on, who I can turn to in times of need, that creates that level of isolation and loneliness that does then result in feelings of anxiety and depression. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for such wonderful questions. We will see you next week on our session of Ask the Doc.
Thank you for listening to the Health Channel podcast. We hope this information has been useful. However, please remember that only your doctor can advise you about what is best for you. Do not start, modify, or suspend treatment based on anything you have heard on this podcast. Please join us again soon.